I'll see you after.
Good morning. Call the meeting to order. This morning we have retired Pastor Griff Vaughter for our invocation. Please stand.
Sovereign Lord God of the universe, your word tells us that it is by your grace and direction that, quote, kings reign and rulers decree justice, according to Proverbs 8:15. You have also commanded that your people pray for those in authority, and it is in conformity to your will that we lift before you the supervisors of Mohave County this morning. As you granted wisdom to the ancient kings, prophets, and counselors of Israel, and to our own founding fathers of this nation as they prayed for your insight and inspiration, be pleased to grant guidance and discernment to this Board of Supervisors today. Bless them with the understanding and patience that is so crucial in their role as leadership of our county. These things we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And thank you. You follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, well, Chair would entertain a motion for executive session to be held on December 2nd, 2013 at 9 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Committee or legislative reports? Supervisor Johnson, do you have a report this morning?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to say that the MPO in Lake Havasu, we hired a planning manager. Her name is Jean Knight, and they'll be starting December 9th, so we should be moving ahead with the MPO down in Havasu. Also, we had our Environment, Energy, and Land Use Committee, which Chairman Watson and I both attended. The subject was water quality rights, drought, and conservation. Over the years, the supply of water has decreased. They were mostly talking about the 14 western states and the Colorado River. Nevada has grown more than anyone ever anticipated, and they have lowered their intake pipes 3 times over the past several years to get water out of Lake Mead. The Colorado River Compact was drawn up years ago, and each state was given an appropriation of the water from the Colorado River. There are several tools that can be used to combat the water issues, whether it be too much water or too little. Conservation is the easiest and most cost-efficient. Recycling water requires a capital investment, and there is federal money available under Title 16 for this type of conservation. The problem is that people don't like the idea that the water has already been used, even if it is used for watering lawns and gardens. Desalinization is very expensive for the amount of water that it produces, and there is a question of what to do with the salt. Infrastructure issues are also important. Our water delivery systems have not been updated, and in order to keep the infrastructure up to date, the water districts need financing that is reasonable. The controversial issue of climate change also plays a part in water quality, rights, drought, and conservation. The federal government needs to plan for adaptation. There's not enough surface storage, and we need to find ways to capture stormwater. Under water quality, new and changing laws affect how water districts deliver water. Some of this legislation is too burdensome for water districts to deliver the amount of water needed. Corrosion and erosion issues in the Southwest continue to be an issue with low water levels. In areas where fracking is conducted, some say there is no impact on water levels. However, the feeling is that there is some impact and increased need for infrastructure. As yet, there is not help from the federal government. The issue of downstream users was discussed briefly, indicating that the pharmaceuticals being released into the Colorado River from the northernmost community is a health hazard to downstream users. It was agreed that there needs to be a better program. That was pushed by Mohave and Yuma. We are the ones that are pushing that the strongest. Some communities are right at the sea level and have high water tables. They are working on adaptation methods. One area indicated that they are in this situation but have lumber industry that uses a great deal of water. The issue is to understand that eventually they will need to store water and balance the use with economic development. Virginia has decided as a state to accept that climate change is real. Capture dams, reservoirs, retention basins are used in some areas to handle large amounts of water during storms. However, there are problems with the Corps of Engineers, Bureau of Reclamation, and EPA with regard to using this method. The consensus is that the water belongs to others and cannot be taken. The permitting process is the biggest hurdle and needs to be streamlined. The water rights issue is the biggest deterrent to all of these processes. Also, the private sector needs to come to the table and get involved with the process. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Very good report. Item number 3, County Administrator's Report.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing today. Thank you.
Thank you. And number 4, there are no minutes to approve this morning. This is generally time for call to the public. We have none filled out this morning, so we will go then to the consent agenda. Items 5 through 31. Supervisor Johnson, do you have any pull?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, items number 14 and 30.
Supervisor Angus.
No, sir.
Supervisor Brotherton.
No.
Supervisor Moss.
No.
And items 14 and 30. Okay. Motion to approve the consent agenda minus items 14 and 30.
So moved.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 14.
Motion for discussion?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second for discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, motion carried. Supervisor Johnson?
I was curious why this was on consent. Maybe somebody can explain it.
Mr. Chairman, that's my mistake. Supervisor Johnson, we intended to have it for discussion, but it inadvertently got on my doing on consent. The reason we didn't correct it on the board agenda is we believe that it would be pulled anyway for discussion.
Actually, it was my decision. Mike and I conferred over it. I don't want you to take the heat over my decision.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Certainly. Supervisor Moss.
I was going through the options, and I read the background material, and I saw that one of the options was not the option to simply take no action. And the background materials indicated that's because it had a leaky roof that would cost $200,000 to fix. If this is a building that has no value based upon or little value based upon the last public auction, and the appraisal wasn't impressively high, why do we care about fixing a leaky roof? Why don't we just let it, why isn't there an option to just let it sit until we decide to do something with it?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Moss, we could certainly do that. We didn't include that as one of the options, but that would be an option. One of the things that we looked at from a staff perspective is if we were going to keep it for some future use or to try to sell it, we believe that it would be in the county's best interest to try to preserve what we have, and if we don't do something with that roof, it would just continue to deteriorate. You know, that option really dovetails into what the board chooses to do with this building. If we are going to demolish it at some future date, then obviously we wouldn't put any money into this building.
Because that's what I'm kind of getting at. It's little or no value, from my understanding. It's if we were to use it, we'd have to deal with asbestos issues and whatnot, which is also my understanding. So future use without major investment is not going to happen. Demolishing it costs too much money. Repairing the roof is a significant amount of money. So in my view, the option is either we let it sit and rot until we have extra money and we feel comfortable investing, tearing it down, or we see if we can offload it to some other governmental entity without it bearing any expense ourselves. So, because I'm personally of the view, I don't want the county writing any checks regarding this building.
Thank you, Supervisor Moss. I'd like to bring up point number 2. In accordance with Arizona Revised Statutes 11-251, 58, with the unanimous consent of the Board of Supervisors, sell the property at less than fair market value to any other government entity or for a specific purpose or a charitable, social, or benevolent nonprofit organization incorporated or operating in this state might very well be our best choice. What are your thoughts on that?
Is that unanimous or majority? Supermajority?
I think it requires a unanimous.
This background
Probably-
material indicates unanimous.
Pardon me?
The background material here indicates unanimous vote.
Yes.
Then that's not something we should waste our time on.
Evidently, you're not in favor of that.
Not in favor of giving anything away for less value than it's worth.
Okay. And solution?
Well, we go back, building was built in, what, 67, somewhere around there?
Yes, I believe.
And whose fault is it that this building has gone into disarray? It's Mohave County's fault. Nothing's been done to repair this. When I took office, there was buckets in there to stop the rainwater. There's plastic covering the computers for our people. It's our fault. I mean, we have done this, and Mohave County's at fault, and I think Mohave County needs to clean up the mess. It's their fault, and it's a responsibility they take.
Very good. Supervisor Angus?
I'm just trying to understand, so you think that we shouldn't give away things that for less value, which is basically valueless, but we should spend maybe $500,000 to tear it down because we let it go into disarray?
Well, we've gotten, Supervisor Angus, we've gotten conflicting reports to the board. The first report a few years ago was that even if we sold it, we could be held liable. Now we're getting the report that if we sell it, we're not held liable. So I don't want to sell something and find out that we are now liable for the removal of all the asbestos and those things. So I'm thinking if we create a problem, if we don't plan for the future and take care of things, it's Mohave County's responsibility, not somebody else. And if it costs us, I mean, the reports say $650,000, I think, to tear something down, which I find hard to believe, but how can it cost somebody else less to tear it down?
Well, may I stop? Say something?
Supervisor
I believe that it always costs governments more to do stuff. So I would be very surprised if and I've spoken to some people in the line of business, and they always laugh when they hear that number. So, and that was sort of the line of thinking, is that if it were given away or it's just some benevolent charitable organization or another entity, that they would be able to do it. It would make financial sense. I mean, if you look at these numbers, it makes no financial sense, but to people who do this, it might. I mean, right now it has no value, but the city of Kingman is growing. The downtown area is thriving, and at some point, that land might have a bigger value. There are people who see the value in it, who have expressed interest. I had been under the impression it was some kind of landmark building, but now I'm being told that, no, it's just sort of a cheaply built building in the 60s, and that's not actually what I had heard all along. But if that is the truth, again, I just don't see how we can justify spending $500,000 to tear down a building that has a land value of $20,000 without, exploring more options. I know we explored a few, and, we got the results we got, but I think we should still look at other options. And what is it really? Are we liable? I mean, that explains the vote that we never understood. We never got that a couple of years ago, that ultimately we are responsible. Are we or are we not responsible for asbestos and future problems?
Mr. Chairman, Silgus, we are responsible for asbestos abatement, and it kind of, even if you sell it, ultimately, if somebody doesn't do it, you end up having to do it if you've owned it at some point in time.
If you sell a building and it's disclosed, if they don't do it, the seller, even though it was disclosed, is responsible?
That's my understanding of at least the federal law on that issue.
Can we get some clarification on that? Like,
Sure.
Just not your, okay.
And I think, Mr. Chairman,
Supervisor Johnson.
go along with Attorney Ekstrom for Supervisor Angus. The county has been stuck with, we've gone through the proper channels in getting rid of hazardous material in the past to authorized places who then went out of business, and even though we paid those people, we got stuck with the bill. When we did our tires and they went to Phoenix and they went through two or three other groups of people, they came back and got us eventually later with fines from the EPA and everything, even though we'd gone through all the proper channels and done everything.
I'd like to recommend a possible solution to this problem, and that would be to investigate to see how much it would cost to remove the asbestos in the building. That seems to be the major hurdle that a couple of the people that are interested in the building that I'm aware of have. If the asbestos was removed, a higher likelihood of those people being interested in the building may occur. That's my understanding from a conversation that I had with actually a contractor.
Mr. Chairman, I know Public Works has done extensive analysis of this building, engineering analysis, and I believe they did include removal of the asbestos in this building and provided a cost for that. If I could ask staff to come up and give us an exact cost, but either Public Works or procurement. One of the things that we did when we were, Mr. Chairman, when we were analyzing the actual cost, we worked with Taylor Ross on making sure that he included what we believed would be a cost for the rehabilitation of the building. And so we tried to disclose everything that we knew that was wrong with the building, which included that asbestos, the cost for the removal of the asbestos, and the other things that would be necessary to make that building at least usable. And when Taylor Ross did his analysis of the building, he came up with a reduced cost that we placed in front of the board. I believe that was one of the reasons, him taking that into consideration for the great disparity in costs that were originally presented to the board. Anyway, do we have that information? I think it was $180,000, if my memory serves me.
Well, that actually begs for another question. If we were to invest $180,000 into the removal of the asbestos, how much would it be then to destroy the rest of the building? Has that been investigated?
Mr. Chairman, we have an engineering estimate for the demolishing of the building. If you recall, we did go out for bids for the demolishing of the building, and at that time, the bids that we received were somewhat controversial because there were some issues that weren't taken into consideration, and there was some protests on the bid, if I recall. It seemed to me that the original bid for the removal was between $450,000 to $500,000. Are we close?
Yeah, I believe
I hate going by my memory, but thank you all.
Sorry that took me so long. Actually, it was Exhibit N that was provided. The engineer's estimate for abatement requirements came in at $226,350, and that does include contingency in that amount.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Annie, what was the original bid for the demo project? Do you have that?
I have it back in my file. It's kind of bulky, so if you'll excuse me, I'll just bring the whole file up here.
Mr. Chairman, while they're gathering that information, may I make a comment or an observation?
Certainly. Supervisor Moss?
We're sitting at, as a county, where we have various tax cases pending, which could cost us a lot of money. And I would personally oppose anything which had required the county to spend any money on this, especially if there's a sit and let it rot option. Close the doors, board up the windows, put padlocks and everything, and we'll come back to it. We could come back to it 1 year, 2. If we're demolishing it, whether we demolish it to tomorrow or 10 years from now, we're demolishing it. So deterioration really isn't an issue. And so I have some real hard times with thinking about this county spending any dollars on this building, none of which seem very cost effective. Like, we're not going to get our money's worth out of it at the end of the day.
Thank you, Supervisor Moss.
I did like the idea of giving it to some other government entity or any other charity to handle, because at least it was a $0 proposition to us. If there's an issue of lingering federal liability because of the asbestos, maybe we should direct our staff, for example, would a performance bond cover us in that? You know, you could give it to you if you provide a performance bond, because if they don't do it, then we can hire the contractor and that bond would pay for the abatement.
May I say something?
Supervisor Agus?
You know, this is a kind of an unusual building, I think, because it's a county building, but it's in the city of Kingman. And we have spoken to some developers who had some interest, and, you know, it could be future economic development. It could be a great asset to Kingman and the county. And so maybe it's time that we all sort of work together, the county and the city, with some developers, and again, think outside the box, help a little here, tax incentives here, to make this blight something that could be a positive thing for everybody. And I think that the time has come to start thinking like that.
So,
Can I ask a question of Supervisor
Supervisor
Johnson?
Mott?
Supervisor Johnson, if the issue is liability, would requiring any government entity or charity to post a performance bond for the asbestos abatement, would that resolve your concern?
Supervisor Moss, with all these other companies that we had insurance with them too, and we still got stuck with the bill, you know, years later down the road. That's the problem I have with that. It just might not be this board that gets stuck with it, but farther down. That's the problem. Either handle it up front, or I've seen them come back, because I can't remember, maybe Bill will remember how long it was when we got that one bill from down south, and the tire bill was, those tires had been shipped years before that down there, so it's hard to get a bond or even their licensing, and then the EPA came after us, even though the EPA had licensed the guy we gave, and so they should have had insurance.
So I'm trying to puzzle my way around this problem, and I feel like I'm in mediation. But you know, in real property, unlike perhaps tires and personal property and other personal property, in real property we can make a conditional transfer, require that performance bond, and set a time frame where title would revert back to us if they don't complete it. So we may have to foot the bill, but we're going to foot the bill now if we don't transfer it. So we're not really any loss if we did a conditional transfer with the performance bond. It comes back to us, we have the bill. If we don't transfer it, we have the bill. So we're not losing any ground if we did some sort of conditional transfer arrangement with the condition, of course, being the abatement, together with the performance bond.
Supervisor Brotherton?
Yes, Mr. Ekstrom, in all my years in real estate, I have never known of a seller being responsible for a property that was sold forever and ever and ever. If the proper disclosures were made, everything in that agreement is disclosed, I don't know how we could still be responsible forever for this.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Brotherton, this doesn't involve the parties. It involves the Environmental Protection Agency, which is a federal agency, which basically sued a large number of counties in the country over the fact that the asbestos, or I guess the tires, were not properly disposed of, and it had nothing to do with the parties. It's a typical real estate transaction. You have individuals dealing, you know, straight up together. This is the EPA, and asbestos is treated differently than a lot of things.
And that
You know,
responsibility.
I think Supervisor Moss raises a good point. We ought to look at every option we could have to take care of it, and certainly a performance bond is one of them. And I doubt that when we did our tire abatement that we thought about performance bonds, because we had a company that was sent to us by the EPA.
I just can't imagine any taxpayer wanting to invest any money into this building. And even if we gave it away, we would still be money ahead. So I guess there's some things I'm missing here, but I just, I'm not in favor either of putting any money into this building.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd make a
Supervisor
motion to direct staff to come back with some information regarding the questions and possible solutions that Supervisor Moss brought up, and anything else at next meeting, I guess, or the meeting after.
If that's in the form of a motion, I'll second it.
Okay, so your motion would state that you direct this back to staff to answer the questions brought about by Supervisor Moss? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 30,
Make a motion for discussion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
we have a motion and a second for discussion on item number 30. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, the question I have is these computers, were they run through IT, or is this something that library is doing on their own?
Thank you, Annie.
Supervisors, yes, this was run through IT. The original lease that Nathan McDaniels ran through for countywide, this is also one that was part of that. It just came at a later date because these are the computers that the library patrons use. So they're not actually the ones that county employees are using, but it's all part of the main overall contract.
Okay, I guess besides being part of the overall main contract, part of the problem I'm having with the library district is they seem to be going off on their own, and we have an IT department. Has our IT department said, yes, these are good computers, yes, this is what we would recommend, we find this a good deal, not that they're just buying whatever they want to buy without having our experts, say it's a good deal.
That is my understanding, that the IT department has been part of the process since the beginning, but I can defer to Mr. McDaniels if he wants to come down and further that along.
Thank you.
I believe Mr. McDaniels is on his way down.
Morning, Chairman, Supervisors. Yes, the lease for the library district is something that I look at and review, and I work with library staff to make sure that they're getting machines that meet the specifications and standards that we would use.
That's the only question I had, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel.
I make a motion to approve item number 30.
We have a motion and a second to approve item number 30. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 32, discussion, possible action regarding the adoption of Board of Supervisors Resolution 2013-169, requesting the Arizona Legislature to restore local highway user revenue funds and work with the transportation stakeholders to identify and enact revenue enhancements for the existing HERF distribution system and to pursue policies that improve efficient utilization of transportation resources, and further approve the Board of Chairmen to sign and send a County Supervisors Association of Arizona endorsed priority letter to various state legislatures and the governor.
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve item 32, the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of item number 32. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 33, discussion, possible action regarding the, consistent with the requirements for an executive management performance review. Mr. Hendricks has prepared a self-evaluation for the board consideration for the rating period from January 2nd, 2013 through May 20th, 2013 as acting county manager and administrator for May 20th, 2013 through November 18th, 2013 as the county administrator and county engineer.
Mr. Chairman, is this an item we should be going to executive session? Because if so, I move to, we go into executive session.
This item can go to executive session.
Yeah, I make a motion that we go into executive session.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second for executive session. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, we'll go into executive session then.
as a board member, a single board member elects to call individually, or is that just an informal understanding?
What I would do is accept the review and the goals and objectives, and then set the next one with the possibility of, how's that?
We will make a motion then.
Yeah.
No, we are.
Oh, reconvene this meeting. We were discussing item number 33,
Oh, no, we're going to do it.
the performance of our executive director, Mike Hendricks. And from my chair, I want to say, job well done. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion accepting the performance review of our county administrator, county engineer, Mike Hendricks, and further setting another 6-month review, 6 months from the meeting 6 months out from this date, with the exception that any county, or excuse me, any member of the Board of Supervisors, any single member of the Board of Supervisors may call for an early review if he or she believes that to be appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, would Supervisor Moss change that to be on like the 12th month and the 6th month instead of November and?
Yes, I'll amend my motion to make it the 6th month and the 12th month of each calendar year,
Thank you.
or sooner if any individual supervisor wishes to call for one.
I second the motion.
Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Item number 34, unfreeze the county information director position, changing the position to public information officer, utilizing the revised job description at range 20 with an unclassified status to report to the county administrator. This has been continued by the board at the October 21st meeting. Chair would entertain a motion for discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go with my philosophical instinct on this one at this time, and I move that we disapprove unfreezing the county information director position, changing the position to public information officer, utilizing the revised job description at range 20, and with an unclassified status to report to the county administrator.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to disapprove. Any further discussion? I do have a little bit of discussion I'd like to bring forth on this, and I'd like us to think about the possibility of changing that down the road, if we could, to what I believe would best serve as a county affairs officer. Would that be something that we would like to look at? Instead of a county information officer, I'd be more like a county affairs officer that would do a number of things for us.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I believe that is something that would be worthy of future discussion, but not under the starting point or umbrella of a PIO or anything like that. It'd be something different. There may be some encapsulation of similar responsibilities, but that's something I think we should probably look at down the road a little bit, not right now.
Okay. I'll certainly bring forth that thought down the road. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? I oppose it, but I'm a little bit overruled. Item number 35, or number 36, I'm sorry. Discussion, possible action, the designation of Mohave County employee to handle citizens' inquiries regarding the tax rates charged and collected by the businesses under Mohave County's taxing authority.
Motion for discussion, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion and a second for discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, if I
Supervisor
may.
Johnson.
Put this on the agenda. I know- I believe other supervisors have had the same questions brought to them where the county has a quarter-cent tax rate that we charge. Establishments are charging anywhere up to 2% from what I understand. And we've had this problem before in the county area where actually cities are charging taxes in the county area. And instead of each board member getting this or somebody at the staff or not being handled, I thought it might be good to have a designatee, probably in the county manager's office, who would handle these calls to keep a record that says, yes, X business is not charging proper taxes, or Y business is charging too much taxes, and then can follow up with DOR, because there's no point in 12 of us making the same call to DOR. Plus, they're not going to listen to all of us. If we have one contact point, maybe they will deal with that person. That was my reason for putting it on.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Mott?
I think Mr. Johnson's correct on this point. I've myself have photocopied receipts and scanned them. I'm not sure if it was to Mike or to Mr. Timko or maybe it was Cindy Cox, where in the county we were being charged 10% sales tax. And I'll be honest, it was a Taco Bell, because I still have some college habits when I'm driving in the car and going from point A to point B, and my $3 purchase was overtaxed. And I look at that and say, well, if they're doing it to me, they're doing it to everybody. And either they know or they don't know, but where is the dollars going to? If it's so, I think it's something that, and by the way, I've detected it twice in the last couple of months. And I rarely buy things other than fast food. My wife makes all the purchases. So I think if I've seen it twice in the last few months, it's going on, and we need to address it. Because I don't want future businesses thinking that we have a 10% sales tax rate in Mohave County, Arizona.
Supervisor Brotherton?
That may have been including the city tax.
It was in the county.
Are you sure?
Positive, because I know that I know where her border is compared to my border, and I get none of Bullhead City. It was in my district both times.
I see, because I know some people have the opinion that out Stockton Hill Road, beyond Gordon, is the county, but that's not true. It's the city, and I had somebody complain about the taxes at a restaurant, but the restaurant was in the city.
It's most definitely the county.
Okay. I've got a question for Supervisor Johnson. Who did you recommend, or who have you got in mind?
I don't believe that it'll be a big deal. I mean, I think that we might have a rush of people the first time, but even at that would be maybe 15, 20 people. I just think give it to the county manager, and he said somebody in his office as a person, just so we had one point of contact, and they could update us. And at the same time, let's say if we call in and using the Taco Bell reference, and we did it in November, and then somebody starts calling in February saying, hey, it's not, these guys are charging. At least we have somebody that can follow up and make sure DOR is doing their job. So that would be my motion would be to direct the county manager to come back with one point of contact that we could put on the website and notify people.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 37, discussion, possible action regarding the adoption of Board of Supervisors Resolution number 2013-171, supporting the appointment of William D. Don Martin to the Arizona Game and Fish Commission, and direct staff to transmit the resolution to the attention of Governor Janice K. Brewer, State of Arizona.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I move to approve item 37 of the agenda.
We have a motion. I'll second that motion. Discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 38, discussion, possible action regarding the direct staff to enter into an agreement with a firm specialized in the codification of local government's ordinances, and have the legal expertise and technology necessary to assist Mohave County in updating and publishing Mohave County ordinances. I believe this was brought by...
Motion to discuss?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Supervisor Angus.
Thank you. Just for a little background, when I first took office, I was asked about how people, the public, can look up our ordinances, and I was told that there is none. And if you go to some of the cities, all the cities, Bullhead, Lake Havasu, you go to their website, you could search, you can find out how many cats you can have, and we didn't have it. I was very surprised. The word is codification, and I had never heard that word before. And so I had spoken to staff back then, and they said they'd look into it, and I know they contacted some companies that are used and do a good job. In fact, I believe that all the cities in Mohave County use the same company. And it's kind of, I don't know, it kind of got on the back burner, and then I brought it up again, and staff got to work, and I think we're ready to move on that. So I think Nathan has a few things to say about it.
Morning again, Chairman, Supervisors. So in March of this year, when Supervisor Angus first approached me, I began looking for different companies that offered this service. So initially what I did was I looked at Bullhead City's website. They do business with a company called Muni Code. So I initially contacted them, got a proposal just to kind of get an idea of how much does this cost and really what kind of work is entailed in order to accomplish something like this. So I did that in April, gave the information to Supervisor Angus, but like she said, it kind of went to the back burner. It wasn't built into the budget for this fiscal year. So now that Supervisor Angus is bringing this to the board's attention, a decision can be made based on, the board's will. I think this project kind of goes hand in hand with openness and transparency. So as soon as this was brought to my attention, I used the county's public documents interface to make our ordinances available to the general public, but the problem we still have is they're not codified. Basically, each ordinance is adopted and named as similar to your resolutions, ordinance number 2013-15. What does that mean to anybody? It doesn't mean anything unless they go look at the ordinance. So essentially, this project will be engaging Muni Code, which is the company we've identified that we can buy through based on a cooperative contract with City of Glendale that is on what's called the SAVE cooperative contract. It's like cooperative purchasing language that was competitively bid when City of Glendale first engaged this company. So we can use that contract. So essentially the work entails hiring them to do a bunch of legal research. And basically what they do is they look at our ordinances and do a report for us and basically tell us which ones are in conflict with each other, which ones could potentially be illegal against Arizona revised statutes or the Constitution, things like that. So, and they also codify it, which means there'll be titles, different sections, and for human beings, it'll be very easy to read and understand. So we have a proposal from Unicode Corporation. The base cost of that product is approximately $30,000 if we include tax. And then on moving forward every year, $550 a year to have that code online available. And then there's some transitive costs associated with when you adopt a new ordinance.
Thank you, and thank you for all your work on this. And all the information is on it's not on our server, right? They take care of it, they upgrade it, they update it. I had spoken to the city manager of Bullhead and asked about their experience with this company, and they had nothing but glowing. It takes a lot of the work, well, it takes all the work off of the county. They do it, all the liability, and they seem to be the company that does this for everybody.
That's correct. Essentially, it's called software as a service. So they do the legal research, they put together the codified ordinances, it's hosted on their website, we simply link to it. That's what all of their customers do. So there's no real technical infrastructure that's required in order to move forward with this project.
And another side benefit of this is once we have all of that in a format we can search and make sense, we can go through them like we talked about during our run-up to being elected, getting things off the books that don't make sense, that are not appropriate, and maybe are even unconstitutional. And that will make it a lot easier for us to do that.
That's correct. So if you approve moving forward, it essentially will take 7 to 12 months for the legal research to be done. And that was why I really kind of support this, is if we're going to do this, if we make a decision today, 12 months from now, in theory, the board will have a bunch of work to do as far as cleaning up your ordinances. Which ones are you going to, vote to dissolve? Which new ones are you going to create to fix some of the problems that they identified during their research?
Right.
So I think this is a thing we definitely should do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDaniel.
I have questions of you, Mr. Chair. Do you have any idea how many ordinances are out there in the county?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't.
I guess whose job was that to codify this before? I mean, this isn't a new word that we just found out about. I mean, we are a county, and I know 17 years ago, I asked for a county ordinance book and nobody had it. Is there a requirement by state law that we actually should keep a record of our great decisions we've made?
Honestly, Supervisor Johnson, that's not really my forte, honestly, to be involved in the codification or design or regulations of the county's ordinances. I was kind of brought into this because it's something that's being provided through, City of Bullhead's website. But as far as the underlying regulations and policy on how the county manages its ordinances, I've never really been a part of that. I think you might want to look to the clerk of the board's office at some level, and I honestly, I don't have a great answer for you when it comes to that. I can't explain that.
Okay, I guess before I get to the clerk, then the only question I would have of you would be, this item before us today, doesn't it require a procurement, or because it's under 30,000, the manager can do it?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Johnson, Nathan has, after he gathered all this information, he has been in contact with procurement, and procurement pulled together the information that this was on a contract that we can piggyback off of. So if the board decided for us to move forward with that today, the board could certainly direct staff to put together a contract with, and provide me with the authority to, or the procurement director with the authority to sign it.
Okay, I guess with Attorney Ekstrom, we can't be sued by somebody else for not going out to bid?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Johnson, under these circumstances, no. We've looked at it.
And then I guess through the clerk, I don't know if the clerk or Attorney Ekstrom would have the answers. With all of these county ordinances we were doing before and the changes to planning and zoning and everything, who was supposed to be keeping these? I mean, because that always bothered me when we had board resolution 2301 or whatever, and it just went in a drawer somewhere. I mean, Mr. McDaniel is saying it's going to cost $30,000. Well, I don't think, we have no idea how many we have. We have no idea where they are, what they've been done with. I mean, that seems like a low bid. I wouldn't do it for $30,000. I mean,
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Johnson, the repository for those types of things would be the clerk of the board. And they have big files and cabinets full of ordinances over there. They're just not organized, I guess.
They are organized as they were given out by number, but they're not divided as to category on the ordinances. They are all filed in the board vault, so are the resolutions. They're all in books by number. They're all accounted for. They're also scanned into Laserfish. So we do have all of the actual ordinances and resolutions in the vault, and they are in order.
how far do those go back?
From the beginning, I believe. I'd have to check on that.
So back to 1912?
Actually, I believe they go back to the 1880s.
Go back to 1880?
May I say something, Supervisor Johnson? The proposal that Muni Code provided us was based on the work they had done for Pima County this year. So they had the experience of going through the legal research with Pima County, so they looked at how much work they did for them, the number of pages, the number of ordinances, and that, I believe, is what the proposal is based upon. There is built into the proposal that we have that we worked with procurement on, making sure it was on City of Glendale's contract that we can piggyback on. There is some costs outlined inside the proposal that says if the number of ordinances and pages exceeds the proposal, there's additional cost. And if it's beneath the proposal, we get refunded money. And the way that the proposal is outlined, there's essentially four invoices that we would basically pay. The first invoice would be execution of the agreement, where $8,000 would be due. That basically starts the process. And then the second step of the process is they submit a proof to us, and then we pay them more. And then the next step is a legal manuscript that we have to review. And then the last step would be whatever the remainder of the balance is. So there's different times throughout the process where we basically cut them checks as they perform the work and we review it.
Okay, do we have, the ones I'm used to using before was a book, because this was before computers. Will there be a book that we have so that our planning and zoning people can carry, our deputy sheriffs can say, oh yeah, you're in violation of whatever? And I guess the breakdown, do we have one that they've done somewhere else, or is it all on computer? It's not done in a book?
The primary piece of it is hosting it online. That's kind of the new way to store and access information. But the proposal does include them providing us 2 hardbound copies, and additional hardbound copies can be purchased if we need them. But in theory, the building inspectors, zoning inspectors, whoever needs access to these ordinances can have a copy of the electronic version of the ordinance, or they can just access it online anywhere they have internet connection.
Right, but it'll be like a small book. I mean, I'm used to, with LA County, large county with obviously a lot of ordinances, but it was in a small book that anybody could pick up and look at. You could look through for zoning issues or whatever it was.
I would have to look at the proposal to see what the size of the book actually is.
I guess, before they break it down, I think the board would look at it to see, because we're going to have a lot of, I think, ordinances that probably don't pertain to anything, or, maybe have been duplicated, because how does planning and zoning know that when they change something and it wasn't changed prior, I guess,
And let me just make sure I understand that to go on what Supervisor Johnson was saying. You're saying that this company also, when they're doing it, they make sure they also do the legal end, that it's in compliance with state statute, things like that, which is amazing for, you're right, for a relatively small amount of money.
Exactly, yeah. So that's, the scope of work in the proposal essentially outlines, the legal work that they're going to do.
Good.
So then they're going to give us back an executive report that basically makes a recommendation on what you as the board should adopt or dissolve or create.
Great.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Moss?
I just wanted to congratulate Supervisor Angus and Nathan for putting their heads together and bringing this to us, because we're really pulling Mohave County out of the 1700s when it comes to our method of tracking the various ordinances. So very good job.
I have a question.
Supervisor Brotherton?
Do we have any kind of estimate on what the total cost might be, or even close?
Yes, the proposal essentially is approximately $30,000. In the proposal, the language is like $25,950, I think, if my memory serves me correct. But if you add tax on that, it's ballpark $30,000 base cost to do the work, and then annually $550, plus some costs every time the board adopts a new ordinance. So many dollars per page, things like that, to update the paper version. I believe I read in this latest proposal that we have that there was no cost related to updating the electronic version online.
We didn't have it in our backup. Is it something that you,
Sure, I can get it to you. We do have the latest proposal. Kind of the reason why you didn't have it in your backup was because I was targeting the first meeting in December, and this got pushed up to this meeting, so my research wasn't actually completed yet. But in the time that it got put on the agenda and today, I do have a proposal that outlines the contract that we're allowed to piggyback on, so that can be provided to you.
very good.
Any further questions of Mr. McDaniel?
I just need to actually add one more thing real quick. So I think the way that the agenda item was worded was the recommended motion is to basically approve expenditure out of general fund contingency for the initial cost, and then to budget appropriately in the future for the rest of the remaining costs that we will pay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I want to add to that, if I may,
Certainly.
and to authorize the procurement director to sign the agreement.
Okay. Need a motion?
Okay, so I make a motion to direct staff to enter into an agreement with a firm specialized in the codification of local government ordinances and has the legal expertise and technology necessary to assist Mohave County in updating and publishing Mohave County ordinances. Do I have to do the whole rest of the stuff? Provided said agreement falls within the authority of the procurement director, and direct the costs associated with the fiscal year be borne by the general fund contingency account appropriately budgeted in future fiscal years.
Then I'll second the motion. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Excellent. Thank you, Supervisor Angus. Item number 39, discussion, possible action, approve the governmental agreement contract between Mohave County and Lake Mohave Ranchos Fire District, memorializing the board's direction and actions taken pursuant to ARS -11-251.59. Motion for discussion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second for discussion. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Mr. Ekstrom, would you like to?
If I may briefly, the original agreement with the board required that we provide a contract identifying the terms and methods of reimbursement to the county of monies expended on behalf of the district. Supervisor Johnson pointed out to me that we did not have a formal contract. I believe they've come to us with a proposal, we've accepted it, but I thought it was wise at that point to get a formal contract setting out the terms for repayment, and that's what we've done as requested by Supervisor Johnson and the board.
Okay, thank you. Will that require a formal action at this point?
That would be my preference.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Johnson?
I guess, where do we come up with this interest rate of 2.17 or whatever it is?
That is the interest rate, I believe, that our bank is currently, that we currently have with our existing bank, and that's what the finance department and Mr. Flynn came up with as an appropriate interest rate.
I guess the problem I have with that is, it's in the statute, we can charge 10%. We've expended a tremendous amount of time here at the board and with staff time. If these people could have gotten, we saved their fire district, I believe the 10% should be charged. If you go in with bad credit, you don't get the 2.1%. We're using taxpayers' monies from other districts to actually save this fire district, and I think that we need to be reimbursed appropriately. That's the only thing I have.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson.
May I, Mr. Chairman?
Supervisor Moss?
I think Supervisor Johnson's correct in most commercial transactions. The problem is that interest is also coming from taxpayers, so it'd be taxpayers paying taxpayers. And I don't really know if we need to be further burdening a fire district, which is fragile and provides a very valuable and important public safety service, because all we're doing is saying, it's going to take you longer to get out of debt, you owe us more money, and by the way, that's bills being paid by the Lake Mohave Ranches Fire District taxpayers. I sympathize and I agree philosophically with them on 98% of transactions. It should be that way, but I think in a transaction like this, we should actually go with the lower rate so we're not further burdening a district's recovery.
I guess, Mr. Chairman, to answer Supervisor Moss, I understand what you're saying about those people having to pay, but those are the people that allowed their fire district to get that far into debt, and they've asked the people of the rest of the county to come in and bail them out, which is not really our responsibility, and we did it, and I think they should be, we should be compensated for that, because the time of our staff is not even figured into this equation. All we're doing is paying Mr. Flynn. So that's my reason. It's not a punishment. It's nothing else. It's just a simple business transaction on my side.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson.
And I agree with you, Supervisor Johnson. I just think that the greater good here outweighs us treating this as purely a commercial transaction.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve the agreement or the contract between Mohave County and Lake Mohave Ranchos Fire Districts memorializing the board's direction and actions taken pursuant to ARS Section 11-251.59.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second by Supervisor Brotherton. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
Motion carried. Item number 40, discussion, possible action regarding the adoption of Board of Supervisors Resolution 2013-177, encouraging Senator Jeff Flake to sponsor legislation to allocate funds from the Land and Water Conservation Fund to annually fund the PILT and secure rural schools.
Motion for discussion, Mr. Chairman?
Second.
We have a motion and a second by Supervisor Angus. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried.
Mr. Chairman, for me?
Supervisor Johnson?
I place this on the agenda. As you all know, every year we go through trying to find funding for payment in lieu of taxes from the federal government. And for those that understand, the payment in lieu of taxes on federal land for all the services that we provide out there through the Sheriff's Department and road maintenance and all those, and that's why they pay for the loss of our revenue. And because we fight every year, sometimes we get less money. This year we lost money because of sequestration. This fund that we're looking to pull the money from, the Land Water Conservation Fund, pulls in a tremendous amount of money, and that money right now is being used to buy more federal land to take off the tax rolls. So if we can get our Senator Flake to push this legislation along with other people, I think it would go a long way to funding every year, so that part of our budget would at least be covered. We would know that it's there forever. That was why I brought it forward.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Angus?
Just as a matter of point, have you spoken to Senator Flake? Is there a reason you chose him? Has he expressed interest in wanting to do this?
I have spoken to the staff of numerous senators and congressmen. It is the opinion, I've spoken to Senator Flake's staff also about this, and because Arizona is a large portion of federal land, it was felt that we needed somebody at the Senate level to push this through, and Senator Flake, because of his stands on against earmarks, this would not be an earmark because the money's already there. It would give more credibility to the legislation. On the House side, we have no problem at all with our congressman. So that is why we're looking at Senator Flake to push this for bipartisan support.
Thank you.
If I can make a comment,
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman, because I think Supervisor Johnson is doing a great thing and a badly needed service for our community, and I want to thank him for that. But it's, in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much. With the legislative conference, for example, if all the federal lands in Mohave County were taxed at their vacant land value and we were to receive that income like the Midwestern and Eastern states do, it'd be $30 million a year in property tax to Mohave County, and they give us roughly $3 million. So I think it's the least the federal government can do, and I want to thank Supervisor Johnson for pushing the issue to at least confirm that minimal amount that they've agreed to give us is steady each year, so we don't have to worry about sweeps and cutbacks and everything else, because they're just adding insult to injury when they do that.
Thank you, Supervisor Moss. I have one comment I would like to make. I'd like to thank Supervisor Johnson for bringing this up and pushing it forward. It only makes sense for the Pilt and rural schools to be funded from the royalties produced by the lands to begin with. So thank you very much for bringing this forward.
Mr. Chairman, also, I think it would have, this affects the entire county, and I think it would be more impressive and have a greater impact on our senator and congressman if we had all elected officials in Mohave County sign this, because they're used to seeing the 5 of us send them something, but this affects, because if we lose this $3 million, like we have lawsuits on other things, departments will be cut, which includes the courts and the sheriff and everybody else. So I think we ought to give the opportunity to the other elected officials to sign on to let them know that this is important to all elected officials in Mohave County.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to adopt Board of Supervisors Resolution 2013-177 and to have it signed by all elected officials in Mohave County at the county level.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second from Supervisor Angus. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We shall adjourn.
Well,
You have a wonderful day.